So he actually came to Spruce Island not really because he wanted to, because he was living in Kodiak, and basically he had gotten into conflict with particularly Baranov, who was the Russian governor at the time. And he had conflicts particularly over the treatment of the native people. Baranov and sometimes the Russian company was very exploiting of the people, so that they would mistreat them often, and Saint Herman was actively would protest against some of this treatment. So he was actually kind of persecuted, and even for a time they were held under house arrest. Some of the monks, he actually was one of 8 monks, so 8 monks actually came, but then he came to Spruce Island basically to kind of escape from that persecution that he was receiving there, and went to Monk's Lagoon basically to live a life of prayer, fasting, quiet, but he also had an orphanage and a school for the local people, for the local children, and so he came really because of the mistreatment that he received, and then he stayed there for the rest of his life over on Monk's Lagoon. So he spent, I think, close to 40 years on Spruce Island, on Monk's Lagoon. Mm-hmm. But in terms of miracles, our church, I would say, first of all, doesn't. The local veneration grows into a kind of universal canonization. So we don't necessarily count miracles like, okay, you have to do 3 miracles to be a saint or something like that. So Roman Catholics tend to be, it's sort of a more bureaucratic process. But we basically, he began to be remembered locally, so especially by here, the people here in Ouzinkie, the people on Spruce Island, the people in Kodiak, and was remembered, not only for his sort of supernatural miracles. For example, one of them was the halting a tidal wave. So she asked about that, but there was a tidal wave coming into Monk's Lagoon, and he placed a icon of the Mother of God, Virgin Mary, on the beach, and then the wave didn't pass that point. So that was one. But certainly also healings, miracles of healing for those who were afflicted in various ways, that he would pray and they would become better. But also he was a man of courage, that he stood up against very powerful men to defend people who had no one to defend them. So, that's part of his sanctity, his holiness as well. And then he was, just a man of constant prayer and fasting, and lived a very prayerful life. So I think he's remembered for all those reasons. Of course, there are others too. We would also call him what the church calls an ascetic. The word ascetic comes from Greek word askesis, which means self-denial, to deny yourself. So, he slept on a board. He had a rock for his pillow. He wore chains throughout his life. So kind of mortifying the passions, the comforts of life in order to acquire holiness, to acquire the Spirit of God. So those are sort of aspects of his life, and he again became remembered and beloved here by the local people here. And then later, the church officials, the bishops and so forth, began to hear about him and to keep his memory alive as well. And then in 1970, he was officially canonized by the church. so it wasn't until 1970. He died in 1836, so there was a long period before he was actually, officially recognized as a saint. So